What's up, everybody? I'm Josh. This is Silver Springs. It's time for a drink. So lately we have had a lot of questions about rye whiskey, which is great to me because I love rye whiskey. So I am very encouraged to know that other people are interested in it. Asking some questions about what the differences are, what the options are, and so I just kind of wanted to go through a couple things. These are some rye whiskeys that we have in the store, but regardless, there are lots of rye whiskeys in other stores. If you go to Memphis or go to Nashville, you can find a much bigger selection. But with rye whiskey, what we're really talking about, the primary difference being is spiciness, and it's not hot, like proof hot, like drinking moonshine or grain liquor or anything like that hot, but really spiciness, kind of that whole Christmas spice, cinnamon, clove, that sort of a thing, where it's just a kind of like a carrot cake or a spice cake. And so rye whiskey really brings that to the table. And so to be considered a rye whiskey, it has to be at least 51% rye. And so when we talk about what goes into different whiskeys, they call that the mash bill. So what the whiskey is made up of is the mash bill, and you can find information on mash bills for all kinds of whiskeys online. One of the websites that I really love is called distiller.com. They have reviews, and the reviews are from actual customers, people who have been in stores, bought things, and they give their opinions on it, which I really like. And that was actually how I had found this Willet 4-year rye. It had a high score on Distiller, and I tried it and loved it. So when we talk about mash bill, the mash bill, at least in my experience, again, I do not claim to be a whiskey, wine, or any spirits expert. I bought a liquor store a year and a half ago and drank before that, but obviously have no expertise in any of that. I'm just giving you my experience. But with rye whiskey, I haven't necessarily found a direct correlation between spiciness and the mash bill. So, like this Bullet rye is an example. This is called Bullet 95 rye, and the reason they call it 95 rye is because it's 95% rye grain in the mash bill. And so you would think the higher the rye, the spicier it would be. Well, I have not found that to be the case with this at all. I would say that the Bullet rye is much smoother than some of the other ryes that I have tried. It's less spicy, so I would think that this would be a really good sort of entry point if somebody's interested in trying rye whiskey and they're not really into spice. If you're more of a bourbon person, which is sort of caramel, butter, rounded notes, this might be a good entry point. So this again is 95% rye in the mash bill, and I wouldn't say, at least in my opinion, it's not super spicy. But then there is Whistle Pig rye, which I've done a review on before, and that's 100% rye, and I think that is the spiciest in a good way. It's sort of the most complex, the most varied taste profile. Like I think Whistle Pig is great. So I had expected Bullet to be very similar to that, and I did not find that to be the case. I think that this Willet 4-year rye is very spicy. I would say there's less sort of sweetness in it, but it is very spice forward and excellent. As I had heard somebody say they had tried rye whiskey and they said, well, it makes my mouth tingle. And that's really what it does. It's not proof hot like you're feeling it coming out of your nose or anything like that. It's really sort of makes your mouth tingle for a while, and that's the rye. I just acquired an audience member here, but actually 2 audience members, Rosie and Allison, came back. So 2 things that you want to consider. One is the proof, and then 2 is how much rye is in it. Obviously, the best way to figure out what you like is just to drink a lot of stuff over time. If you know somebody that has a bunch of rye whiskeys, to try those and sort of get a taste of what you like. Or if you're out, if you're at a restaurant or somewhere, it's much cheaper to buy a shot or a taste of a rye whiskey, even if it's $20, than it is to spend 30, 40, 50, 60 on a bottle. So Bullet 95% rye, I would say, is very very smooth for the high rye component in it. The Sazerac rye is really good. I would call it sort of medium spicy. The proof is not super high. It's a 90 proof rye whiskey, but it gives you a really great sort of entry point as well. If you're a little bit more, if you want to try something that's a little bit spicier than the Bullet, Sazerac is a great way to go. I think the Bullet retails almost everywhere for around 30. Sazerac rye can be kind of hard to find because it is an allocated whiskey, so it can be a little bit more difficult, but even this retails for usually around 32 to 39. So it's a great sort of entry point into that. If you're looking for something that's a little bit spicier, Michter's rye is a little bit higher. It's usually in the low to mid $40 range retail, but is another great option. And this is a single barrel straight rye. And so it gives you a really good option for, this is basically 85 proof. It's kind of, again, sort of that medium spice, doesn't really stand out as far as super spicy or more to the bourbon side. It's sort of the mid ground like Sazerac is, but this will be, again, in the low to mid $40 price range. And then Willet, the Willet 4-year rye, I bought this, I think, in Nashville, and most of the time it will be on the shelf somewhere between $65 and $80, just depending. It can also be hard to find, hard to get. It's not just available everywhere, but this is really sort of gonna open up on the spicier side. So this is 102 proof. So the proof, again, isn't super high, but what you're really gonna get with rye whiskey that you're not gonna get with bourbon or Irish whiskey or any of that stuff is really that complex spiciness, and it's kind of hard to describe, but if you get an opportunity to try it, I think it's really a great option, especially when it's cold, especially around the holidays, because so much of that stuff sort of goes into the holiday spice, whether it be cocktails or the food you're eating, or even the candles or incense or stuff like that that'll be put out. It really fits with the cold weather sort of Christmas season. So if you haven't tried rye whiskey before, either find somebody that's got some rye, come in, we'll try and give you the best review that we can and try and fit your flavor profile. But ultimately, if you've got friends that have rye whiskey, go over there and bum a couple tastes of rye and figure out what it is that you really like. But rye whiskey in the cold weather is a great option. We're always here to help you. If there's anything we can do, feel free to message me or ask me any questions through any of the social media platforms. The biggest thing we want to do is educate and help you find something that is best for you. And like we always say, drink what you like the way you like it, and every once in a while, try something new. See you next time.